David Cassidy, name a few that have reps for being hard to deal with and mean the person he hates the most is David Cassidy. David Bruce, April 12, 1950, in New York City. He was more than just a teen star in the 1970s. He was a performer with many skills whose charm, vulnerability, and long-lasting millions of people fell in love with his charm. All over the world as the son of Jack Cassidy, an actor, and Evelyn Ward, David came from a family already busy with show business. His parents got a divorce when he was young, and he was mostly raised by his grandparents while his mom went to work. How David is linked to the world of having fun would turn out to be both of his fate and his burden. From a very young age he showed a natural tendency toward a love of music and acting that would in the end define his life in both happiness and sadness. When he died, Cassidy's life changed for good. Got the part of Keith Partridge in the groundbreaking musical comedy show The Show. Partridge Family aired from 1970 to 1974. Even though he first tried out for the part with little hope of becoming famous for it, his casting put him on the map for a cultural event that the show was about, around a mother who had lost her husband and her 5 children, kids who were making a pop band hit a chord with people, and David's show how the good-looking, sensitive, and Keith's musical skill made him his signature shag made him a household name. Cut, Eyes That Look Deep, and The Boy Next Door appeal. Cassidy became an overnight. Girls were screaming his name like it was a verb. Bedroom walls were covered in posters all over the world, and his records were bought in the A lot of songs are like, I Think I Love You, top of the charts and became anthems of People Who era, which made him one of the most popular pop stars of his time. But behind the shiny picture of a pop, David Cassidy and his fans wanted something deeper. He often told the truth about how fame can be hard and that he had to deal with because he was made to be a teen heartthrob. He wanted to be taken. Take your job as an actor and musician seriously, merely admired for his good looks. Despite he pushed through these problems with passion and strength, he put out solo albums that showed off his trying out their musical skills with types of music, from pop and rock to Cherish, Rock Me Baby and other blues albums. And It Gets Harder As They Climb They Fall showed a more grown-up, self-reflective artist trying to make it, no longer playing a TV character. During the 1980s and 1990s, Cassidy changed himself by going to take the stage in a well-known musical shows like Joseph and the King, Technicolor Dreamcoat, Blood Is Amazing Brother, in which he shared the lead role with his Sean Cassidy, his half-brother, and EFX in Las Vegas. His stage presence and singing skills shown that he wasn't just a passing, he had been an entertainer for a long time. Able to captivate live audiences, he also made a number of TV shows appearances and toured around the world, keeping in touch with his loyal fan base, many of whom had grown up with him and stayed faithful to him for decades. As a person, David had to deal with a set of problems that made the news and showed the more complicated parts. A part of his life story and his struggles with alcoholism, causes money problems and family split up, especially with Katie Cassidy. His daughter, an actress, became public in 2017 when he was older. He bravely told everyone that he had been found to have dementia, a disease that had also given his mother. This disclosure caused a new wave of help and kindness from fans, and the many of whom had worked in the entertainment, been following his career since the beginning. David Cassidy's new love story on TV, and there were a lot of family events of connections that showed both the good and bad things about being famous. His first year of growth and emotional distance, he married actress Kay Lenz. The performer is very good and has won awards. Famous for her parts in Breezy and Rich Man and Poor Man, got married in April 3, 1977, while Cassidy was at the height of his fame. In the years after the Partridge Family, their marriage was one of the best famous people who got married in the era that's often shown in movies, magazines and tabloids, but the how show business works and the stress of constant public attention hurt their relationship. Cassidy, who had trouble keeping his private wants with his public image, he later admitted that he was too young to deal with the emotional needs of marriage at that time. After a number of years of trouble and failed tries to make peace with their differences, on December 28, they got a divorce. 1983. Despite the breakup of their marriage, there was still some of respect for each other, and Lent later showed sympathy for Cassidy's struggles with fame and drug abuse. Soon after, Cassidy's second marriage happened. After getting married to Myle Tanz in 1984, a well-known and successful horse breeder with a horse sports with a passion for them. They had been together for almost 10 years. Early in 1974, when they met for the first time at a horse auction in Lexington, Kentucky, is a place known for its long history of horse racing. Cassidy, a horse lover for life and an avid rider, and Tans agreed on a lot of things in their shared love of thoroughbreds and the peaceful leaving of the country living while they were married. The couple horseback riding interests together, even having horses together and spending time at. However, Cassidy's own horse farms his demons, especially his struggles with the long-term effects of alcoholism. The breakup was caused in part by fame of the marriage. After being together for 4 years, they got a divorce in 1988, ending yet another part of Cassidy's life on the path to happiness and stability. Cassidy had a child in 1986. Circumstances that made things more complicated, of complex things going on in his personal life. That because of this, Katie Cassidy was born that year. Of a relationship outside of marriage with Cher Williams is a fashion model that Cassidy they had dated briefly, but he admitted Cassidy did not take an active role in as a parent to Katie. Instead, she was raised by her mother and stepfather. It was Richard Benedon who gave her a stable home life and took on the role of father role all through her childhood. Katie later tried to become an actress herself, becoming well known for roles on TV. Arrow and Supernatural are two examples. Despite having the same job, and Katie and David are related biologically, Cassidy never got close to her. A father and daughter's relationship. In an honest interview in 2017, Cassidy thought about with a mix of honesty and sadness over his breakup with Katie. "I've never been in a relationship. I wasn't her dad when we were together. I was her birth father, but I didn't raise her. Her life is very different from mine. I'm proud of her, she's very skilled. It's hard for me to believe she's that old." Is now his words showed how heavy it was emotionally he felt from not being a part of her growing up, and the bittersweet realizing that time has flown by and time's gone by. Cassidy got married for the third time on March 30, 1991, to Sue Chiron, a songwriter who he shared both creative drive and a need for a more calm life. This marriage was a sign of hope for the future beginning for Cassidy, who was trying to get back to a more grounded life, especially as he started a new one-stage work for a while in his career, go on tour and work just for Chiron, who had been to get married. It was also a chance to get to know connection. That same year they had a baby, a son named Bo. Devin Cassidy into the world would grow up to be interested in music too, sometimes performing with or in an honor to his father. That shows a connection that cared for and was present much more than the one Cassidy had with Katie. They've been together for more than 20 years. Gotten through the complicated parts of family life with times when they seem happy along with rising tension. By August 2013 it came out that the couple had filed for divorce after they broke up. In February 2014, Cassidy's money and legal problems added to his ongoing battle with abuse of drugs put a strain on their. Even though the relationship can't be fixed, many times, Cassidy showed affection and thanks for the time they spent together and the son they raised. By the 2000s, looking for a calmer life away from Cassidy turned his attention to Fort Palm Beach, Florida. In 2002, the sun-soaked community had a slower pace and a break from the stresses of it. Was in Hollywood that Cassidy hoped to have a more peaceful life by spending time interests, music, family, and friends. His life was still marked, though, by bad money management and personal challenges. In 2015, after years of court cases, fights, lawsuits, and growing debts made worse by years of drinking and bad money management, Cassidy filed the declaration was a plan for bankruptcy. Moment of truth for the once loved and American teen idol who had been one of the most well-paid and revered performers in the world. This was made clear by Cassidy's financial collapse. The sad difference between the heights. A lot of trouble because of his early fame later shaped a lot of his adult life. During his time in Hollywood, David Cassidy ran into a lot of different personalities, ranging from the humble and kind to the cocky and harmful. In his few moments of doubt, Cassidy wasn't not willing to name people he believed had a reputation for being difficult, egotistical, or just plain rude, mean-spirited, and he held having very strong feelings about a few towering figures in show business history. He often showed disdain in private and sometimes in interviews for many well-known but in his eyes stars whose behavior is deeply flawed left him with a bad taste. Jerry Lewis was said to be someone Cassidy didn't have time for. While Lewis was a known and loved comedian and director by many for how funny and clever he was in helping people in need with the muscular link between dystrophies, Cassidy saw the worst side of him, saw Lewis as the personification of ego and pride in an entertainer who always wanted the center of attention and treated others with condescending. Lewis's temper, often onset of temper tantrums, and how he dealt with the cast and crew were well known. Cassidy, having grown up in the business world, had seen or heard enough first-person accounts to make a strong. He once said that he had a negative opinion of Lewis, seemed to think that God owned him. A gift for Charlie Chaplin in show business. Though an undeniable leader of silent, Cassidy also didn't like movies as an icon. Chaplin is admired for his artistry and works that will last forever. Like the Cassidy thought the public's view was quite different from the man who shot the video. Stories about Chaplin's sneaky how he treats women, his political in trouble, and the cold way how they treated some co-workers ruined the. Cassidy told the story that he saw Chaplin as a man who was smart but used it to control instead of lift up, often putting down dissenting voices on his sets, putting himself around people who can help him. John Wayne was a huge star in Western movies, and American masculinity was also one of the people Cassidy criticized. Even though Cassidy knew Wayne had an effect on film, he didn't like the actor's well-known behavior off the screen, in particular his unwavering support for far-right politics and his dislike of civil rights, and what Cassidy saw as Wayne's pattern of being mean to others. Personality that is larger than life, according to Cassidy, was a front that hid fear and being closed-minded. Cassidy thought that Wayne was the worst kind of scary for a man who used his size and fame to get ahead conversations and shut down the opposition. Another name that came up was Young. When Cassidy talked about bad people, Young, and won an Oscar in Hollywood actor, had a lot of problems in his personal life, problem with alcoholism in his life. There is instability and violent outbursts. Cassidy saw how Young was acting disturbing, especially the way he treated the women in his life. His demons show up in his work. The sad end of environment. Young's life was murdering. He married a fifth time and then had his own. Cassidy's belief was strengthened by life that the movie business often kept dangerous men safe and promoted them instead of making them answer. Many people were surprised that Andy Griffith was also someone Cassidy didn't like, even though Griffith charmed people for many years as the kind sheriff of Cassidy. Mayberry knew a very different. Griff had a man behind-the-scenes job, a reputation for being moody and conceited, angry and short-tempered, especially when the Cassidy saw this, but the cameras weren't rolling, as the worst kind of hypocrisy, and didn't like how different Griffith's home made his private life and his TV image a roughness. He was especially upset about how Griffith is said to have treated co-stars he didn't see as equals, and it got bad. Cassidy's opinion for good. Joan Crawford is another famous TV star, made Cassidy's list of what he thought were her extreme pride and mean treatment of others. Even though she had survived in a tough business, Cassidy thought she often used her star power as a weapon, manipulating and being mean to stay. The stories of her abuse were relevant. The famous parenting book by daughter Christina in Mommy Dearest. Cassidy's disgust was strengthened. He couldn't reconcile the flashy front with the harsh truth that many people said. Marlon Brando was praised as one of the best also. Cassidy's list of the best actors of all time dislike not because they aren't talented, because he is known for not liking the business that made him famous. Cassidy was very angry about Brando's tendency to hurt his own cases. Films show up unprepared and are rude. Cassidy viewed with co-stars and directors Brando as a man who wasted his chances with fame and used other people as pawns in his game. Strange experiments on yourself. He didn't hate Hollywood. Cassidy for no reason. One time in an interview that he hated Crow, even though he was younger. Cassidy's attention more than many others on the list for his notoriously bad temper and things that happen off-screen, like bar fights, to being rude to reporters and co-stars. Crow's fame came before him. Cassidy thought he was a good example of the modern movie star with too much cash and power. He thought there wasn't enough discipline. Crow's actions made his own worse. Credibility as a person who plays the make your job look indulgent and focus on oneself. Mike Myers, even though he was loved by people who liked his characters in Austin Powers and Wayne's World, was another name. Cassidy was linked to haughtiness and lack of emotional maturity. Many people have said Myers is hard to deal with. who worked with him were charged with control freaks who are very sensitive to criticism. Cassidy, who was picky and hard to please, found that I don't like this level of ego, especially in a comedy that he thought should be about power is not about connection and weakness plays and trying to be the best. It's likely that Steven Spielberg is who you. Steven meant something more complicated, adding in Cassidy recognized Spielberg's huge talent and power, but reportedly had found him to be cold, calculating, and driven by in charge. Casey wasn't as impressed by commercial, more by character than by success, and he found Spielberg to be someone who cared about outcomes more than relationships, whether they ran into each other or. Cassidy walked through friends and shared contacts away thinking that Spielberg's warmth on the camera rarely showed those behind. Dustin Hoffman was admired for his also transformative performances didn't work. To get to know Cassidy better and impress her, Hoffman's perfectionism and hard behavior at the start had become famous, and Cassidy thought that his intelligence came at several reports said it cost too much. Came to light over the years of Hoffman being, especially to women, emotional abuse co-stars and helpers, that Cassidy found it's hard to take that hypocrisy in the underdog is someone who is often cast as the sense of right and wrong. David Cassidy, despite his own problems and controversial events, held a high regard for honesty, being humble and kind, and for him, the entertainment world was all about talent. Wasn't enough to get respect, it had to have the same morals as the people he didn't like. The ones he talked about with anger or disappointment were those who used their fame for bad things, trampled over others, and wore masks that were far away from the truth about who they were. On November 18, 2017. Cassidy was in the hospital with liver and kidney problems, failure, and was very sick in his medically induced coma, which he woke up from the coma 2 days later and still in critically ill but stable condition. Doctors say hope to keep Cassidy safe until the liver was made available for transplant, but he passed away in November from liver failure. 21st, 2017, at the age of 67, according to his last daughter Katie Cassidy. So much waste, the Word said.